Hello, I am Tammy Marshall, and today I am reading for you the very first chapter of my most recent novel, Last in the Class. I published it in January of 2025. The prologue is already on my YouTube channel, so if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, please go back and do that. This is about um, some people at their 50th class reunion and some intrigue and problems that result because of something that happens there. So, chapter one, we are going to meet these people. Chapter one, June 2010. Ginny didn't return for her father's funeral 3 years later, nor did she return for the 10th, 20th, 30th, or 40th class reunions. However, in 2010, Ginny decided she'd like to see the surviving members of the class of 1960 and Bergman, Iowa, one more time. So she made the long trek to the middle of the United States and pulled up in front of the country club a half hour after the social hour began. She ran a brush through her short, curly hair, applied a dab of lipstick, and brushed some lint from her floral patterned skirt. Once inside, she showed her identification to the guest book attendee, a huge woman named Madge, who didn't recognize her as a member of the class. Madge eyed her passport suspiciously and then handed Ginny a blank name tag and a blue Sharpie. Print your name clearly and large, Madge barked. Some of the class can't see worth a damn anymore. Ginny bent over the table, signed the guest book, and wrote her name in large block letters on the name tag. As she finished writing the last letter, someone tapped her on the shoulder. Ginny pulled herself upright, turned, and faced a balding, slightly stooped man who was grinning down at her. He winked at her through his glasses, and a flicker of recognition passed through her mind. William? He nodded in reply as she peeled off the name tag's backing and positioned the tag over the top portion of her bright yellow blouse. Before she could pat the name tag into place, though, he pulled it loose and crumpled it into a small ball. Forget that nonsense. He wasn't wearing a name tag, and neither were most of the other attendees. Shrugging, she tossed the blue marker onto the registration table in front of Madge's startled face. I doubt anyone will know who I am without it. She certainly didn't. Perhaps you shouldn't stay away for 50 years, but you're pretty memorable, so I think you'll be surprised. His eyes twinkled in merriment through the lenses of his glasses, and she glanced at the drink he was holding. He gestured toward the bar running the length of the open common room in the country club. Come on, let's get you a drink. It'll make this whole event a lot more tolerable. Trust me. Thanks, but I'll have a soda or a glass of water. I need to maintain my sobriety if I ever hope to remember who all these people are. Personally, I'd prefer if everyone was wearing one of those name tags. At the bar, William ordered another whiskey, neat, and Ginny requested a glass of water with lots of ice. She surveyed the group of people, most of whom were seated at circular tables dotting the room. Not too many of us here. William sipped his whiskey. Not too many of us left. She gasped. Really? Well, living around here, that is. She tilted her head in acceptance of his statement and fixed her gaze upon him. How many of us are left, living anywhere, would you say? He paused to do some mental math. Oh, I'd say there's still about three-fourths of us above ground, so around 40 or so. Well, that's good. But I had no idea we'd already lost, what, 15 or so? He clinked his glass against hers. We are getting old, you know. It's bound to happen. What do you mean, getting old? Have you looked in the mirror lately? She smiled at him. He placed his free hand over his chest. Ouch, that hurt. Then he gestured to a table. Care to join me for the meal? Ginny glanced around the room once more, wondering if a certain someone was in attendance. But there was no one fitting her memory of him. She smiled at William and nodded. Sure, thanks for the offer. They moved to the table where a couple was seated. The duo clearly had been studying and discussing Ginny because, as she approached, their conversation came to a halt, and the woman's sallow cheeks pinked a bit. The man rose shakily to his feet and waited for Ginny to sit before he returned to his own seat. William said, Bob, Karen, do you remember Ginny? Virginia Drummond? Bob gave Karen a quick, I told you so look before saying, I knew that was you. We both played the clarinet and you sat by me in the band. Ginny studied him. He did seem vaguely familiar, and she had played the clarinet. Of course, Bob. How have you been? What have you been up to all these years? Good, good. Karen and I married a year after graduation. I took over the grocery store business, and Karen came on board too. Once our three kids were raised, that is. Now, though, we're retired and spend most days driving to our grandkids' events. We even have two great grandbabies, if you can believe it. How about you, Virginia? Ginny, please. Virginia makes me sound so old. She laughed, and Bob and Karen exchanged another look with each other. Ginny cleared her throat. Oh, no, I don't have any grandchildren. No kids either. The couple across from her seemed both abashed and appalled, so she added, I did have three husbands, though, who were all quite childish. Do they count? She arched an eyebrow. Her answer only served to make Bob and Karen seem more appalled. William jumped in before she could say anything else. In my book, they do, but I'd say the same about my ex wife. He paused a moment to take a swig of his rapidly disappearing whiskey. So, what have you been doing with yourself all these years, Ginny? You mean instead of popping out babies? She ignored Karen's sharp intake of breath. I've been writing and traveling. Perhaps you've read some of my little missives in the papers. Do people around here read the New York Times or the Los Angeles Sentinel? Bob shook his head, but William studied her long and hard. You're that, Ginny? The culture writer who goes by Ginny Monroe in her byline? She bowed her head. At your service. He opened his mouth as if to say more about her writings, but she interrupted to ask, so, William, what have you been up to all these years? He shrugged dismissively. Running a couple companies? Bob chuckled. William's being humble. He's the wealthiest one among us. Perhaps you've seen some of the stories written about him in your big timey newspapers. Bob leveled a challenging gaze at Ginny. Sorry about my dog. Barking in the distance there. Actually, Bob, I haven't. I don't write or read about the business world. I write about the arts. Bob raised his bushy white eyebrows and shared another look with his wife. Karen gave Ginny a tight smile and cleared her throat as though she were about to say something to Ginny, but then her gaze shifted to something over Ginny's shoulder. A piercing squawk filled the room and all table chatter subsided. Ginny and William shifted in their chairs for a better view of Madge standing on a small dais near the bar. She had her pudgy fingers in her ears and a pinched expression on her face, as did many of the attendees who were seated near the speakers. The feedback from Madge turning on the microphone faded away, but Madge's mouth was near the microphone, so her heavy breathing was audible to all. Is she that winded from walking up those two short steps? Or does she have emphysema? Ginny whispered to William. Probably both, he replied. Ginny hid a grin behind her hand. Was she in our class? William scowled good naturedly. You don't remember Madge? He tilted his head toward her and lowered his voice. I assure you, she looks nothing like she did back then. She was quite exotic, with long black hair. She was the majorette and could twirl two batons at once. But if I remember correctly, she was somewhat of a mean girl, as they're called nowadays. Ginny grimaced. I do remember her now. Yes. I tried to make friends with her during my first marching band practice, but she shut me down cold. William nodded. She did that to me too when I asked her to be my date for one of the dances in junior high. Ginny patted his shoulder. I'd say you dodged a bullet there. He covered his mouth and stifled a laugh. Yes, her long suffering husband is the sad sack sitting at the end of the bar, completely ignoring her. Oh my, Ginny said. But before she could add to their conversation, Madge regained enough breath and began speaking into the microphone. That is the end of the first chapter. In chapter 2, Madge is going to read something that essentially changes, the course of events for Ginny and William and other people who are in attendance at this 50th class reunion. Leads to one of them potentially being the last in the class. These are available as paperback and ebook at Amazon.